I was born in Tennessee, but I currently live in Texas. I grew up in a traditional family. We went to church on Sundays. We had barbecues on the weekends and all that kind of stuff. My mother was wonderful, a very wise woman. She was my best friend. I also had a younger brother. The truth is that I never got along very well with him. We were very different, but he was still my brother. Back in 2015, I was admitted to a psychiatric hospital because a woman entered our house, stabbed my mother and took my younger brother with her. According to the police, the woman was a person who was mentally disturbed because she lost her only son. I saw everything, and it caused me to have a psychotic break. My father took me to the psychiatric hospital. I was there for a few years. I could tell some interesting stories about that mental hospital, but that will be a story for another time. When I was discharged from the psychiatric hospital, my father decided that we should change our entire environment, so we moved to another town. My father chose this place because it seemed quite calm, and I needed an environment free of stressful situations, since I suffer from panic and anxiety attacks due to my psychotic break. The first 20 days I was locked up in the new house that my father had bought after selling the other house. I didn't even want to go out to the backyard. I was lying down all day as I was getting used to my new medication. I only left my room when my father came home from work. We watched a movie while we prepared dinner, and during dinner we watched another movie. Finally, after 3 weeks, I decided to leave the house, but only to the backyard, to get fresh air, listen to the birds and see the clouds. Unfortunately for me, one of the neighbors had a dog, and for some reason it started barking, which upset me, so I quickly returned to the safety of the house. When my father came home from work, while we were preparing some toast and watching the movie The Day After Tomorrow, during the scene where the homeless man appears with his dog, I told my father that I had decided to go out to the backyard, but that the sudden barking of a dog had made me return inside. My father congratulated me and said I should try again the next day. That's what I did, luckily. That time the neighbor's dog didn't bark. I was spending time in the yard. I could even tolerate the barking of that dog. Of course, it continued to upset me, but it was less and less. One Sunday, which was my father's day off, he asked me if I wanted to go with him to buy some groceries. I didn't feel ready, and I let him know. So he told me that there was a small bookstore on the way and that I could wait for him there. He assured me that there would be no dogs or anything that could upset me. So I accepted. In fact, walking was good, quiet, without too many noises. I liked walking through the streets after so long. We arrived at the bookstore and I stayed there while my father went downtown. As I looked around, I came across a slim book whose title caught my attention, Legends of Rivers and Lakes. I bought it and took a look at it right there. There were many stories, but without a doubt the story that caught my attention the most was one that tells the tragic story of a young and beautiful woman who lost her 2 children while washing pots and clothes in the river. The girl was so focused on what she was doing that she completely forgot that her little ones were playing dangerously close to the bank of that deceptive and treacherous river. When she finished washing, she called her children, but there was no answer. She shouted at them again,
Kids,
but no
where
one
are
came.
you?
She got up scared and ran in search of them. She found them floating, lifeless. It was quite tragic for sure. In a way, it disturbed me a little. A few minutes later, my father returned and we headed home. On the way back, I told him about the legend that I had read in the book. When we got home to prepare food instead of watching a movie, we spent the entire afternoon talking about the book and other similar stories. What happened that night, maybe it was the product of having gotten so involved in the subject. Maybe I missed taking a pill. I don't know. But it felt too real. My father had just gone to bed, and I was left cleaning the table. Suddenly I heard laughter, the laughter of small children, not inside the house, but on the street. that caught my attention because it was almost midnight, and since we had moved, children had never been heard near the house. The laughter lasted a few seconds, so I continued with my thing, but what I heard next I could no longer ignore. It was a carriage with several horses. The animals sounded desperate and furious at the same time. I decided to walk towards the living room to look out the window. I saw a woman walking down the street. She was barefoot, she had her hair down, and a white dress with some small stains of what seemed to be blood. Immediately I remembered the woman who had taken my brother. I'm aware that it was not her, but in profile they looked a bit similar. I began to get disturbed. I knew that at any moment I was going to have an attack. Then the woman shouted with a feeling that made me shudder. That was enough for me to lose control. The next day I woke up in my room. Someone had changed my clothes. I didn't remember how I got to my bed. My father was at home. He had not gone to work because he was worried about me. He asked me if I remembered anything. That's when I told him about the children, the carriage, and the woman. He raised an eyebrow. The only thing my father had heard during the night was me. He found me cornered near the bathroom, repeating a phrase over and over again. She's going to take someone. She's going to take someone. My father told me he had gotten rid of the book, and I told him it was fine. That day I didn't even go out to the backyard, nor the next day. 2 days later, while my father was working, someone knocked on the door. I looked out the window and saw that it was an old lady. I opened the door. She showed me a photograph of a little girl. She told me that it was her granddaughter. She mentioned that she had disappeared. I told her that I had not seen her, but that I would be on the lookout and let her know if anything happened. Yes, that girl had disappeared the same night that I had seen that woman. As soon as my father returned home, I told him about the missing girl. I also told him that I thought the woman I had seen the other day must have something to do with the girl's disappearance. That night, I had nightmares. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't sleep. So I went to get some pills from my hiding place that I had stolen from the psychiatric hospital. It was Zolpidem. If that didn't make me sleep, nothing would. I took 2 and went to bed. I don't even remember falling asleep, but suddenly I woke up because I heard the carriage again. I immediately started to shake. I knew that at any moment I was going to have a crisis. I ran for my medicine and I took all 3 pills at the same time. I stopped shaking. I could still hear the horses neighing. I thought about waking up my father, but I didn't. I ran straight to the living room to look out the window. Now there was a carriage. It was gloomy looking. The horses were so dark that only their bright white eyes could be seen. The carriage was being driven by that woman. Suddenly she began to scream, cry and lament. I'm sure I felt the window move. Then the carriage sped away, leaving a trail of fire. I passed out after that. I never found out if the girl was found, because after that day we moved again to another town, because I was very disturbed. Sometimes I think that maybe everything I experienced those days was the result of the mental state I was in. Or at least, that's what I would like to think.